welcome everybody.
And of course, every person doesn't have all these symptoms except for one. If you look to the left on the picture, it says as a headline, auditory, and as a third entry, it says tinnitus. And when we did an investigation here in Sweden, asking people to describe all their symptoms, 100% of the electrohypersensitive persons came down with saying, yes, I experience tinnitus. So that could be a marker to look for electrohypersensitivity. Also, if you go to the right, up in the right-hand corner, the second entry says flu-like symptoms. It's not 100%, but it's very common that people talk about flu-like symptoms. Again, being an indicator of that maybe we are talking about electrohypersensitivity. And as all the medical doctors on this discussion tonight know, the medical history is extremely important, case-wise, but also group-wise. And I hope that people will take the effort to write both case reports, but also compile history over time from several patients to see all the common denominators, all the common traces that could be published. I welcome that because it's very much needed. And you are in pole position, as they say in Formula One. You meet these people, maybe not on a daily, but on a regular basis, and you can have them come back for further discussions. And you can also monitor together with like an electrician or building biologist, what happens when you remove the causes for the problems. Again, I have to remind you, very often the person, him or herself, may not understand the connection, for instance, to the computers, the computer screens, or other installations like cell phone antennas, cell phones in themselves, Wi-Fi routers, etc. You may have to sort of lead them into looking for different sources of, should we say, cellular and molecular irritation. And I don't know, Davida, if you want to point out more around the
Yes,
symptoms here. There are quite
yeah,
many. And I say again, a single patient doesn't have all of them. But
correct.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. So, I have electrohypersensitivity and I have set up a practice. This is what I specialize in working with people with electrohypersensitivity. And that little sentence I put here in the middle, feeling ill, it sounds very vague, but that is typically the first thing people tell you when they're electrohypersensitive. They start feeling ill. They just feel ill. And as you can see, this is the challenge we deal with when we deal with electrohypersensitivity. Because it's a multi-system effect, the symptoms here highlighted in black is typically where it starts. And as it increases and the intensity increases, it becomes red. Okay, and that's how it changes over time. Now, one of the big challenges we have is that people have a lot of vague symptoms over time. EHS does not develop overnight. We all know the glass theory of the glass filling up. I didn't put it on this slide. So typically what happens, as your glass fills up, then at some point it spills over and you start feeling ill. Now, I want to highlight just a few symptoms that are very typical for EHS, and the one is fatigue. Okay, if people travel a lot or they sit a lot behind computers, they tend to get headaches. As Prof said, the tinnitus is a real issue. Many people develop either it feels like pressure behind the eyes, or prior to that, just dry eyes, light sensitivity, or their eyesight may just vary. A very, very common one, especially when inflammation goes crazy in their bodies, is skin rashes. And that talks to the skin dermatitis, which Prof termed in the early 80s. This is an interesting one, crawling sensation. So that they would actually feel tingling, crawling sensation, funny feelings under their skin, in their whole body. It just feels odd. I don't know how to say that. And then, like Prof said, the flu-like symptoms, and typically this has to do with sinusitis, a bit of coughing, aches and pains, pain in the jaw. But the very interesting one, guys, and this is where constipation is very common also. But food intolerances, over time, if it gets worse and worse and worse, you actually develop severe food intolerances. And the interesting thing is, as you remove the exposure and you reduce it, the food intolerances magically just disappears. And when we talk just now about the health impact, you'll understand why we add cancer, because Prof will talk about oxidative stress and confusion in terms of neurological symptoms. But I'm going to hold back on that. We'll talk about that a little bit more. When it gets really bad, guys, if you, for instance, I once at one point when I wasn't in a good place, I walked into a wimpy and the lights, the LED lights, which funny enough have electric, magnetic, and radio frequency, was so tremendous that I immediately felt confused. I actually physically started shaking, and you feel all these prickly sensations all over your body, and you move out of it, and it's gone instantaneously. It is the craziest thing. So today I make a point, I never sit directly underneath LED lights in a restaurant, especially if there's lots of them and they're very strong. So what we would like to challenge you, as Prof said, if people present you with a whole bunch of symptoms and you're just battling to find the golden thread, and you've done tests and you've isolated some stuff, but there's still not a clear answer. It's as simple as asking these guys, switch your Wi-Fi off at night, put your cell phone on flight mode at night, because at night we know your body heals. So by doing that, you can immediately see if the person feels better the next day. However, there is a detox process that happens like any other toxicity in your body. So typically, if a person has got a lot of toxicity, and we always link EHS with a form of toxicity, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So then it's important to actually just be aware of that you might get a bit of detox symptoms for 2 or 3 days. The one at the bottom I just want to highlight, and that is when there's something happening in your body and you don't feel well and you don't know why, inevitably you become irritable. So this is another one with exposure, people's irritation levels, their tolerance to stress, their tolerance to coping with people around them becomes more difficult. So again, I think especially if you deal with children in your practice, if they have mood swings and you bunch of whole other generic symptoms and you can't really find anything in particular, I would seriously look at considering EHS as a possibility.
May I jump in there? Well, if you go back, thank you. One thing that should be mentioned is that many years ago, the Department of Applied Psychology at the Uppsala University here in Sweden, they made an investigation looking into electrohypersensitive persons, and it turned out that they had fewer and lighter emotional reactions than you would expect from any group of society that would be sex and age matched. So they were actually healthier from a psychological and also from a psychiatrical point of view. They did not reveal any specific psychiatric illnesses. One exception was that they could withstand harassments better than the general population. And it's like when you kick your dog, after a while, the dog expects you to kick it as a sign of that you bother at all. And the electrohypersensitive people, they revealed that they could take harassments better because at that time in Sweden, some people, especially unfortunately from the medical field, tried to say that they were just delusional, and they were imagining this. It was just in the head, etc. And then we did some experiments using rats. And rats, as you know, they don't go to the psychologist or the psychiatrist. And we exposed them to the same type of electromagnetic fields as from a computer. And it turned out that the rats in their skin and in other organs, they had exactly the same reaction patterns as the electro-hypersensitive persons. And that really put a lid on all this discussion about it should be in their head. Also, another thing that is extremely important to see, if you look on this multi-system effect with all the symptoms here, this is exactly what you would expect from ionizing radiation. For instance, the workers at Chernobyl in Ukraine, at the catastrophe, they revealed exactly this list. So it is a radiation damage reaction pattern you see here. But this time we don't talk about ionizing radiation, it's non ionizing radiation like microwaves, power frequent magnetic fields, and so on. But the pattern is actually exactly the same. And one thing that also should be pointed out is that in various studies using both human but primarily animal cells, and in cell culture, test tube experiments, and so on, it has been revealed that the non-ionizing radiation from a cell phone, for instance, will cause a deterioration of the immune system. And it is tempting to think about recent deteriorations like COVID-19. Could that have had something to do with the overall radiation? It's just an open question. There is not very much data at all, but this is an area scientifically that ought to be investigated. And I know people around the world are very interested to pursue studies here.
Yeah. Prof, thank you. And I think the one that I maybe missed was insomnia. That is another really big issue
Yeah.
for people with EHS. They don't sleep well, or they don't sleep at all. They're literally wide awake. Now
And
we,
you know that when it comes to sleep, there are very good experimental studies showing that, for instance, power frequent magnetic fields, and that's a long name for ordinary household electricity, will impair the stage 4, the rapid eye movement sleep, which is the part of the sleep cycle where the cells are regenerated in your body and also in your brain. And in some experiments, it was basically wiped out. The people slept, but without any stage 4 sleep. And that's scary in a sense because, as you say, now we talk about electro-hypersensitivity, but when I walk around here in Sweden, normal healthy volunteers, the ordinary citizens, they always complain about problems with the sleep. And of course, that could be a matter of stress or unfulfillment in your life or whatever. But don't forget about the electromagnetic fields. They could play a gigantic role here, actually.
absolutely.